So hello and welcome to the Mundane to Magical Online Summit. My name is Louise Matson and I'm your host. This summit has been created to assist people to shift their lives from the mundane to the magical, to reclaim the truth of who we truly are as multidimensional spiritual beings and gain insights on how to manifest our soul-fueled magical lives. And today I'm really excited to welcome Magenta Pixie to the show. Magenta has been in communication with a collective group of light beings or a higher self aspect since 1993. She affectionately refers to these beings as the white-winged collective consciousness of nine, or simply the nine. And through regular meditation and a journey of synchronicity within her own life, it led to this awakening and connection. Magenta releases her messages from the nine in video form on YouTube, and since releasing her first message in 2008, has attracted over 65,000 subscribers. She has worked individually with clients all over the world and is the author of 3 books, Masters of the Matrix, Divine Architecture and the Starseeds Template, and The Infinite Helix and the Emerald Flame. These channeled books teach individuals, and particularly starseeds and light workers, to find their own sovereignty through the understanding of their own energy system. Her passion is helping people to move through trauma, embrace the enlightenment and ascension path, and to find their own connection with creativity, divinity, and joy. And so it's my absolute pleasure to welcome you to the show, Magenta.
Thank you, Louise. Thank you for asking me to be on your summit. I'm very happy to be here.
I've been one of your 65,000 subscribers, and I've followed your work for a little over 2 years now.
Wow.
And you are prolific in giving out these messages that are coming through you from the nine. And I've always found how you convey the messages, but not only the messages that come through from the nine, but also the topics themselves. You know, you're not afraid to say those things that are coming through you that maybe others are less willing to air publicly. And so that's really resonated with me, because I've certainly experienced that through my channeling, where, you know, I'm being inspired to talk of subjects that I think, you know, oh, these are a little bit touchy, a little bit red flaggy. And you're never quite sure what the response is going to be. So I really respect that about you, you know, that your willingness to actually share whatever is coming through that the nine are giving.
Yes, probably share too much sometimes. I think we're all trained from that higher dimensional viewpoint. We're not aware of it, but we're all trained from birth to do the things, to have the skills that we need in order to do the things that we need to do. And with me, I was always too talkative, too open. I said too much, far too much as a child. So I've had to learn to rein that in and balance it. So it wasn't really the other way around. It wasn't as if I didn't say enough. I always said too much. And so I had to learn to bring that back. So it's come natural to me to pick something up. And obviously I have filters now, and I'm learning how to say things. But when I was younger, I mean, I just said whatever came into my mind and was inappropriate as a child, you know, because of it. So I think that's the training I had, and learning as an adult to rein that in brought me to the balance of being able to say what needs to be said, even if it's controversial.
As a child, I came in knowing who we are as so much more than our physical form, the roles that we played. And at the time, I mean, I'm talking, well, I'm 50 now, so, you know, quite a while ago, that, you know, it really wasn't accepted or taken in a positive light at all. And so I learned very much to kind of shut that all down and lock it away inside myself. And so it's been quite a journey that I've been on to actually allow myself to be open and trust, you know, what is flowing through me naturally, and be able to share that. Could you just speak a little bit about your journey of awakening, of this connection with the nine and other beings that you may have channeled before them, that's kind of brought you to this point?
Yes, I mean, there are many starting points, if you like. It's difficult to look back and think, oh, that's when I started to, channel, when you actually look into what channeling actually is. So this occurred as a child, when I was very, very young. But I think to pinpoint it in a conscious way, in the way that I can't say I understood what was happening, because when I first started to channel, I believed it to be me communicating with a being from another dimension. Now, whilst that is true, there are more explanations as to what channeling is. And I didn't understand the other explanations. That was something that took time. But if I were to pinpoint when that first awareness occurred of me consciously understanding that I was communicating with a being from another dimension, I would go back to around 1993, when I decided I consciously wanted to do this. I'd found a book on channeling. I'd read the book and I started to do exercises for me to meet my spirit guide. These were meditation exercises, and I had all sorts of experiences of meeting all sorts of non-guides, which was funny. And then I finally connected with what I knew intrinsically to be the true guide, and you just know because everything is different, and started to communicate with this being, which this being originally presented to me as an indigenous Indian, in fact, a caricature of an indigenous Indian, very much a red Indian, typically with big red feathers and paintwork, something like you'd see in a film, not really as a genuine indigenous person. And I rejected that image because I said, oh, everyone's got a red Indian. Can I have something different? And then this other entity, it was the same entity, but showing me a different form. And I wasn't sure what this entity was. And I was much more comfortable with this entity because it looked different and I wanted to be different. And this was a Zulu warrior, and much more like a real indigenous individual rather than a caricature. Everything is the reflection of your own mind and your own thoughts and your own awareness. And that's how the higher dimensional stream of consciousness connects with you so that you understand it. So that's when it first started to happen. And I spoke to this being, this Zulu warrior, white spirit, for many years, on and off. I'd go long periods without talking to him, and then I'd connect back in and speak to him again intensively. And I would work with him predominantly for my own training. And he, which I now know was the gatekeeper, if you like, for the higher dimensional consciousness that I refer to as the Nine. They hadn't introduced themselves to me as the Nine. I just knew everything was him, but I could always sense this other consciousness behind him that was greater than him. They would take me through training, intensive training. I'd go out for the evening, and I knew that I was working. I'd be sitting in a pub, which in America is a bar, and they would say, see that person over there, what's happened to that person recently, trace their last 24 hours, what did they do as a child. And it sounds really intrusive, and it's actually unethical to do this. You don't just go into pubs and start vibing people and looking at what they did the last 24 hours. But when it comes in the form of a training, there is a contract that takes place between you and that person before you incarnate. So everything is done within etiquette and boundaries, which I was also taught about. And you make mistakes, but there's always like this guidance, if you like, that's overseeing everything. And you stumble and you fall, but you learn. And that's kind of how it went on until around, I don't remember the exact time, it was around the year 2000, when White Spirit said he was leaving, or rather upgrading, but a new consciousness, a new presentation would be coming in to communicate with me. And whilst I was upset because I didn't want White Spirit to leave, as he'd been there for so many years, I was excited about this upgrade, and this was intense. And I make it sound quite amazing and glamorous, but it's really intense and really difficult, because what's actually happening is, on a biological level, is the brain is changing. New synapses are firing within the brain that don't normally occur in the everyday average person on this planet. Obviously, that's happening far more now. The DNA is changing its structure. Things are going on within the body. And so there can be all sorts of difficult, challenging feelings that you have to go through when this happens. But anyway, this one being introduced himself, herself, to me, usually presents as male because I'm female. It works that way, usually, not always, as a huge, what I would know as an angel, great big white feathered wings and a white robe, and sometimes a bird-like face with a beak and some funny eyes, and then sometimes a human face, and but I couldn't get my head around the fact that I was communicating with an angel. It seemed too far-fetched and too grand and just too out there for me. I couldn't believe this was an angel. So I thought, well, this is something. And I just thought it's a giant bird or some kind of entity. It didn't really cross my mind, extraterrestrial or angel, just that, well, this was the consciousness that I was familiar with, that had showed itself to me in its true form. And then after a few days of white spirit leaving and me sort of merging with this new consciousness, this consciousness morphed into 9, and there were 9 of these beings. And so I called them a collective consciousness. I knew that's what they were. And I knew that they were white-winged. So I called them the white-winged collective consciousness of 9. And I've been communicating with them ever since around the year 2000, again, predominantly for me, more training. I did speak to other people, though, over the years that knew what I did, friends. So I did, people would ask me, can you ask the 9 or ask White Spirit this or that, or do you pick anything up? So but I wasn't doing this as a living, it wasn't my job. It was just something I did, and I kind of kept it quiet, kept it hidden. Lots of people I did not tell, even members of my own family. But if I actually go back further, when I was 11, my father was a hypnotherapist. He was actually an actor and singer on stage, but he was very interested in the mind. And he studied hypnotherapy. He started to do stage hypnosis for the cast members. So all as a big sort of joke. But then when he realized it was working, instead of doing stage hypnotherapy to amuse the cast when they weren't on stage performing, he then turned it into actually helping people. And so this all happened when I was very young. He first started to use hypnosis on me when I was about 5, but then consciously, I didn't know that that's what he was doing. So I had that magical element with me right from very, very little. And by the time I was 11, my father was taking me through hypnosis as a therapy to help me to learn to swim, because I was the last child in my year at the age of 11 that could not swim without armbands, stroke water wings. And so he took me through a therapy, and at that time, all the clients he'd just worked with, but they didn't speak back to him in hypnosis. I know now that occurs very much in hypnosis these days, but back then my father wasn't aware of it. Neither had he come across any studies in his, because he was trained by an incredibly gifted hypnotherapist. He was very well trained, but in all his studies he hadn't come across a subject that spoke back to him while in hypnosis, and it was me that did that. And so this was really the first channeling, because that's what I would have been doing, but I would have been in hypnosis. Obviously that was there in me, the ability to be able to bring that aspect through. And really looking back, that was the first connection with the 9. But at the time, I was only 11. I didn't know what this was or what was happening to me. And my father said, it's your subconscious mind. You're just one of these individuals who's able to bring the subconscious mind to the fore. I mean, he's absolutely correct. That's what it is. That's what channeling is. But we learn to understand our mind and our consciousness through images and through pictures, through things that are that we're able to understand, because obviously the truth of our consciousness is beyond the understanding of what we have. So we have to find models in order to understand and go further and further and further in our search or our quest for knowledge. So that's kind of a few points as to how things occurred for me at different stages with the channeling.
I mean, I agree. I came to the realization about a year or so ago. Somebody said to me, when you're channeling, you're just you're talking to yourself, and it's like, well, yeah, but it's a different aspect of myself.
Yeah.
It's a higher vibrational aspect of myself, and yeah, they may turn up in many different forms. I mean, I never know when I do a client session. I don't know. I just open myself up to the highest beings of divine love, light, and integrity. But I don't know exactly who is going to come through. Sometimes I get names. Sometimes I just get a sense of an energy. But yeah, it's just an aspect of ourselves, because we are these amazing spiritual beings, and ultimately all connected with source. And so it is just a higher vibrational part of ourselves that our very human self can't get its head round, kind of, that being a part of who we are as well.
Yes.
But I feel so many more people. I mean, obviously, when I was a child, the reason I shut it all down was because I was threatened with being locked up for being mad. It wasn't something that was socially acceptable or understood, and quite often feared. But now so many people are feeling that pull to connect with that aspect of self that I believe is in everybody. It's just been kind of dormant in a lot of people, laid under layers and layers of kind of programming to kind of hide it or imprison it, or I don't quite know, but it's so many people now seem to be breaking through whatever barrier had been kind of holding that aspect deep within, or as some would say, outside of ourselves, because I also believe it's about us now embodying that aspect within this physical form, rather than connecting with it through kind of meditation practice or anything like that.
Yes, absolutely. The energy on our planet at the moment, not necessarily for everyone. You have to be receptive to it. So the people that you're talking about that have this lying dormant or locked away, that they have to go through a process to sort of unlock that, to be able to access this energy. But those that can access this energy, it's almost as though they are constantly in deep meditation, or in a trance, or in hypnosis, or sitting in a pyramid, or surrounded by crystals. That's a created energy that is already there. So going back several years, we would have had to have gone into a trance, gone into meditation, gone into hypnosis, or sat in a pyramid in order to access this. This is why these stone circles and pyramids were built in the first place, so that individuals could go into them and utilize the frequencies created in order to be able to make that connection with that aspect of themselves, that divine counterpart, that higher dimensional place within them. But now that energy is surrounding us. There's a giant pyramid all over the planet, if you like, if you want to use that metaphor, and it's somewhat literal as well. The ones that have got things lying dormant, it's really about a certain trauma, a certain heaviness that puts them into a spiral of lower dimensional, lower frequency emotions. So stress and depressions and that sort of thing, and locking themselves away. Once they can move from that, if there's any step away from that into any form of healing at all, then they start to access that energy that's there. And if you want to speak on a more scientific point of view about that energy, you could say that many particles are coming down onto our planet, being released from the galactic core. You could say that there are solar flares going on that are creating activations within the human race. All of these are true, different perspectives of what is happening. But also one could say that something's occurring within people. So the DNA within the individual body is changing its structure. What it really is about is memory. We've incarnated into this reality, and we have to have an amnesia state, if you like. If we were to remember all our past lives when we're born into this incarnation, we'd be very, very confused. So we come in without that memory. But that's only one part of the reality for an individual that is a soul on a journey. And on the one hand, that is a choice, because the soul needs to experience a third dimensional incarnation without memory. From another viewpoint, another perspective, there was an infiltration, and that ability to have memory was taken from the human race. So there are many perspectives that they're all correct. It's not one or the other. They're all correct, and the best way to find truth is to embrace them all. So what's happening now we're in 2019, people are getting their memories back. They are remembering who they are. And when I say that, I don't mean it literally in the sense of they're waking up and I remember being alive in the 1920s when I was a woman who worked in a dress shop or whatever. Yes, it can appear like that, but that's just one small thread of memory recall. It's about knowing who you are truly beyond being human, beyond being in this human form. In the Bible, it says that God made man in his own image. It's the answer to that. What does it mean? God made man in his own image. The memory is about understanding what, God is and how we are in his image. Excuse me, I've got someone banging on the door at the moment. So the dog's going to bark. Apologies for that. It's probably a delivery of some kind. So we're remembering these intrinsic parts of ourselves, that it goes beyond the human. We're remembering why we're here. And that again doesn't mean literal as in I'm here to be a healer. It's like, why are we incarnated? What are the core reasons that we're experiencing this reality? People are getting their memories back through this DNA activation, through these particles, if you like, coming in from the galactic core and the sun, which is like a giant pyramid all over the planet. So years ago, people would access these memories and learn who they were and take a path of enlightenment through the stone circles and pyramids and trances. Now we're doing it with our everyday life. And that's why it's so huge. And this is the first time this has happened this way on this planet in the section of history that we're aware of, that we know of. The nine call this our known history. From the point of our known history, because there is a history before that, but from the point of our known history, this is the very first time we've woken up in this collective way, and in this the amount of individuals that are going through this enlightenment at the same time. There's more individuals going through this at the same time than there ever has been since our known history. And that's why you're seeing it everywhere. And that's why you're seeing it with all your clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose the reason that, this summit came through me as an inspirational kind of channeled idea. I would have never have come up with it myself. But the reason that it came about was because so many people were, a lot of the clients that I was seeing was they were feeling that there was so much more, that there was so much more to their lives, or there was so much more to them, but they couldn't access the next bit. They didn't understand what was going on. They didn't know what that was. And they may have been experiencing things that they couldn't explain. It's like, you describe, having contact and channeling something that had a bird-like face, or had wings, and for a lot of people, when they've not had that at all, to suddenly kind of experience that, it makes you think that you're going mad, or you you don't feel like you have anybody to talk to about it. And I guess one of the reasons why I did this was so that people know, well, there are so many other people out there who have experienced this kind of thing, or are experiencing it, or have, gone that little bit further down the journey. And it's okay.
Yes.
It's okay. You're not going mad. You're actually beginning to wake up to a wider truth.
Yes.
Yes.
And if you're surrounded by people who don't understand what's happening, which is what would happen for individuals who went through enlightenment before the internet, then they would be perceived by a large amount of people around them as, going mad, crazy, insane, or whatever. Yeah. And so they would start to believe that was the case. And the reason why this is such a successful movement, and not that it's been created by any one person, I'm talking about from the higher dimensional point of view, is because we're able to access one another through the internet. Right across the globe, we are able to access one another. So somebody who starts dreaming or seeing things and doesn't understand what's happening to them, feels like they're going crazy, Google it and bang, they've got all these hundreds of people like, oh, that's what it is. So that's what we're here for, the sort of the map makers, the way showers. We're here to create some kind of assistance. And it's interesting that you say, you never would have thought of doing the summit yourself, because yes, this is a nudge, this is a guidance, and at first that's kind of how it works. You get lots of suggestions and nudges coming in from that higher dimensional point of view, and then all of a sudden that steps back a bit and you start to think of things yourself. And when you actually analyze it in a nice balanced way, it's 50% you and 50% the higher dimensional aspect of you, the guidance system that decides. It's like when I come to write a book, the first one, I did not know I was writing a book. I thought I was channeling for another video for YouTube. All my videos go up on YouTube, and I thought I was channeling for another video. It wasn't until sort of a little way into it that I thought, hang on a minute, this is going into a lot of concepts. How am I going to finish this in a 10 to 20 minute video? It's like impossible. And then everything was spreading out, and then I sort of saw the pattern of this and realized this isn't the same as the other channeled pieces, as in transmission. This was different, and I instantly then knew this is a longer piece, this is a book. The second book, I decided for myself, I want to write a book, I want to do another book. That was my decision. But then I had a rough idea of what I was going to say, but then it's not until I start writing it that then the 9 come in. So it's a 50-50, and really this doesn't just mean channeling. It's any creative venture at all. I was telling my 13-year-old granddaughter this the other day about creativity, and explaining, as she was asking me questions, and I was saying it's 50% you, and obviously I'm not going to say it's 50% higher dimensional beings to my 13-year-old, because 13, and this is when we often shut down at the teenage years. This is when we no longer really sort of believe in fairies as much, but we haven't quite got to our maturity to be able to understand the more metaphysical side of things. So we're at a precarious age. So what I said to her is, life gives you the other 50%. So it's you plan 50%, but then it happens in the creative moment. And she understood that. And that is the case for anyone creative: music, art, dance, painting. It doesn't have to be channeling. It doesn't even have to be spiritual, because creativity and spirituality is the same thing. You don't have to say, I'm talking to a being from another dimension, or I'm channeling an ET or a fairy. You could simply just say, I'm writing a story, I'm painting a picture. It's the same thing in degrees, so it's 50-50 between our conscious awareness and the other aspect of us that is that happens in the moment.
Yeah, I mean that's why they call it co-creating, because we get that inspiration, that energy coming through us, and then it's we have, obviously we have divine will. We've got our own will about whether or not we actually choose to follow that guidance, that inspiration, and do something about it. And at that point, if we make that choice, then it's we become this open receptacle to allow it to flow through us and be expressed.
Yes.
through us in that authenticity, or whether we go, actually, no, I'm not going to do that. And we kind of shut it down and kind of block the flow. But the inspiration is always, I always kind of see it that it's, the magic, what I consider the magic, is all around us all the time. It's happening all the time.
Yes.
Within us and outside of us. And it's up to us whether or not we connect with it, allow it, open ourselves to it, or close ourselves off to it and disengage and say, no, that's not for me. And,
yes.
and that's not always entirely conscious, I don't think. I think that happens, people completely unaware of that that kind of push and pull, really, within themselves.
Yes, absolutely. And some individuals very much want this, the mundane to magical, using that as, mundane being third dimensional and magical being fifth dimensional, if you like, another way of saying it. Some people want that magic. They want that magical fifth dimensional experience. And because they desire it so much, they can block themselves from getting there, because they're looking at other people and thinking, oh, I wish I had what she had, or what he had, or it's not working right, I'm not channeling properly. All of this is normal, by the way. It's not a bad thing to feel like this. We all go through it, but that can block the process. But it can also work the opposite way. You can have individuals who have it flooded into their system and they don't want it. And I don't want this strange thing. And they push it away. Yes. So there are many different ways of, and the idea is to find that balance where you're not really in the mundane, you're not really in the magical, you're sitting in the sort of interim edge where mundane and magical merge together. So when you do that, you can then choose. And as I said, it's a 50-50 co-creation. So you might decide, today I'm going to have a mundane day. Today I'm not going to do anything spiritual. I'm going to just be really mundane and 3D. And then you find an hour into your day that isn't how things are planned, and you have an extremely spiritual day, and vice versa. It's about, because we're human, we can't fully fly off into the fifth dimension and into the magical and grow wings and sit on a flying Pegasus horse around a rainbow in physical form. We are in a physical body where that's outside of the law of physics at the moment. In the physical body, we can do that in the other subtle bodies. So we find that balance between the mundane and the magical, and we merge them together to create this sort of middle path. And that's very much also the philosophy of many spiritual paths and religions.
The middle way. Definitely.
Take the Tao.
I kind of see us as the bridge between the two.
The bridge.
It's it is about us now embodying those aspects within ourselves and bringing that conscious awareness within ourselves, but we exist in this physical realm, and until this physical realm upgrades, whatever, it changes, alters to the point where we are able to be physically in the fifth dimension, in a physical way. Then it is about navigating that middle ground, about having the best of both worlds, really, and being that bridge, that conduit between the two.
Yes, especially if you're aware that you're creating that. So with your experience, you are creating that fifth dimensional a reality around you. Every experience you have, every time you move into that way of thinking, every time you have that astral projection or that dream or that channeled experience, you're adding to the creation of that dimension being part of this reality. So that helps you to, because on the one hand, you could actually think, well, this whole ascension process, if you like, where this reality changes, you could see that as being hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years in the future. And from one perspective, that's true. From another perspective, the individuals that are in this activated, enlightened state are already in that future. They don't have to wait hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, because from their perspective, they're in it now. So the ones that are in it now create it, yet it's already been created and they're already there. Because we are looking at linear time and non-linear time merging together. And that's the mundane being linear time and the magical being non-linear time. So that's another way of looking at that structure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, people talk about, sort of creating new earth. And that, for me, it is around being connected with that conscious aspect of yourself and creating in each moment, whether it's a meal, whether it's, going to work, whether it's looking after your family, or doing something really spiritual, what people class as a spiritual task. But actually bringing that aspect of yourself consciously within yourself and working from that perspective, as opposed to, being caught up in the very lower vibrational belief systems and conditions and things that I kind of see as being like an automatic program that kind of runs through our system, because we have been trained, programmed to believe certain things, and it is kind of unraveling and unlocking the influence of that on us, to be in that place where you are actually making conscious choices to be more in alignment with a higher aspect of yourself than just automatically running that same old program that's run through you for years.
Absolutely. We're creating a whole new paradigm in the way that we think, and it comes into our everyday life. Just as you said, you don't have to be doing a spiritual activity such as meditation or sitting in a crystal grid. You can be, cleaning the kitchen floor. You can, when you're in that mindset, everything you do is a spiritual act, and everything has meaning. Everything has a geometry and a structure to it. And it's about feeling your way through this pattern that is your life. So, for example, let's say someone wants to make a purchase. This is just one example. But they're a spiritually thinking person, and they've been on a spiritual path, the conscious spiritual path, for a long time. And they are wanting to, and they have actually created an intention to bring everything into their life that's in alignment with that spiritual path and with who they truly are. So they want to make a purchase, and they have a choice between making a purchase that is perhaps one where that particular item they're purchasing is, let's say, a conflict item where individuals have been compromised and have been not abused, but not been treated fairly in order to create that item. Whether it's jewelry or whether it's an iPhone or clothing or whatever it may be. And then they have a choice with another item that is an ethically fair traded, let's say, item. But obviously that item, or homemade, or an independent seller, that's the item is from the new energy, the magical energy, and the item that is more of a conflict item is from the old energy. That's where we're going. So one makes a balanced choice, and often the items of the new energy at the moment are perhaps more expensive. So one looks at one's own reality, one looks at the amount of funds that they have, so that's looking on the physical level. One looks at all the spiritual aspects to this and makes a choice based on all of those. And one person might choose to buy a conflict item, but that's the right choice for them given their circumstances. Someone else might choose to buy the non-conflict item, but that's the right choice for them based on their circumstances. Someone else might choose to purchase neither of these items and go and find something similar in a different way. But it's about, what I'm trying to say here is it's about being aware of patterns that occur in your everyday life. It isn't just about being spiritual, it's about patterns. So it is about shopping and cleaning and parenthood and relationships and politics and films you watch. It's everything. There's magic in all things. There's a fifth dimensional thread running through all things, and it's learning. And the more you gravitate towards the events and the items and the situations that are with that new energy, that magical energy, that fifth dimensional energy, the more you create that on this planet. And that creates literally geological forces on this planet. It creates gravitational pull, it creates other electrical forces that actually influence the geology of this planet. So you are physically changing the structure of the planet through the choices you make, because our consciousness is intrinsically intertwined with our environment. It's actually one and the same thing from the higher dimensional point of view. So it's becoming aware of that.
Absolutely. And I've certainly noticed major changes in my lifestyle, in my nutrition and things like that. And it's happened quite naturally. There's not been like a definite, all right, I'm going to do this now, I'm going to do that. It's just been this natural progression to sort of raising the vibration, as it were, of what I put in to my energy field. But in doing so, that's also affected how I perceive the outer world around me as well. I mean, one of the things that has come to me this year, 2019, is that it's a year of sovereignty. And I see sovereignty as us actually, embodying that higher aspect of ourselves, connecting with that consciously, and allowing ourselves to shine our light, allowing ourselves to be open, not putting those barriers of protection around that aspect of ourselves, but actually standing in our truth. And that process is kind of, you have to go through that process of understanding what your truth is, and using your discernment, and kind of testing that out for yourself. What feels right to me, what feels light, what feels a bit funky in not a good way. And I kind of see what's happening around the world in a slightly different way to a lot of other people, because what's come through me, things like Brexit and Trump and things like that, is that they're all lower vibrational representations of that sovereignty shining through. But because they're lower vibrational, they trigger quite a lot of people, and they're coming out in a lot of fear-based, all that low vibrational kind of programming that gets associated with it. But I'm actually I see it from a completely different perspective. So that's been quite interesting for me, and quite challenging, because you feel quite uncomfortable sharing that when so many people are embroiled in the lower dimensional aspect of how they're perceiving the world and what's going on.
Yes, because those things, Brexit and Trump, don't have to be lower dimensional. They can be actually higher dimensional situations, things, people, whatever. But because the perception is coming from the filter that is creating a lower dimensional emotion within the individual, or and the matching belief structure. But when you say year of sovereignty, I mean, very much so, 2019, if you were to choose a word to explain this year, sovereignty absolutely fits. And that's the word the 9 did come forward with at the beginning of the year of sovereignty. So it is about sovereignty within ourselves, exactly as you've said, taking that, really taking a understanding and a knowing of your own power without going into ego, as in I am so powerful, I am so great. It's about knowing how powerful you are within your actual existence, within your life, within your humility. But then that is mirrored, that sovereignty is mirrored through our consciousness, because the individuals that are enlightened are the predominant creators of the consciousness on this planet, because the frequency of their own thoughts has a much, much wider radiation than the lower negative thoughts. So they are, as the 9 say, steering the ship of Earth, if you like. So that consciousness is radiated out into the reality, and it's matched within groups and communities, and that includes countries as well. So, Britain will want sovereignty, and the expression of that in a third dimensional sense is to create borders and be independent. And Trump is trying to do the same thing, wanting sovereignty for America, and he is his interpretation, or the third dimensional interpretation rather than that's just part of it, is to create safe borders, which is why he wants his wall and other things. So this is all part of it, and so many people jump a step forward. Spiritually thinking people as well can do this. They actually look at this situation and think, well, borders are not unity, and spirituality is about unity and the release of borders. So we don't want a wall, and we don't want Trump's thoughts about a wall, and we don't want Brexit. We want to be unified with Europe, and we want to keep our borders open. And they're correct, but they're jumping ahead into the fifth dimensional reality where there are no borders. There don't need to be borders because we're a unified circle. That's the fifth dimensional. That's the fully magical energy on this planet. But we're not there yet. 2019 is the year of sovereignty, and we're becoming sovereign. So how do we do that? We learn what we are. How do we do that? We create a boundary. It's actually an event horizon around our energetic structure, so we can learn what we are. We become individualized or individuated. So Brexit is doing the same thing, third dimensionally, and so is Trump's wall. These fit the becoming sovereign. Only when one understands the event horizon, the border, the boundary, and the structure within, and the infinite unified nature of the structure within the event horizon, because an event horizon is a boundary that's not really there. The event horizon is a boundary of an infinity. Only when we understand that can we then let the borders down and open ourselves to the greater reality, which is all the other aspects of ourself, outside of ourselves, in other infinities. So any spiritual person who's saying we don't want a wall and we don't want Brexit, they're correct, but they're jumping ahead, and we aren't there yet. We have to go through the entire refining process so that every single individual has come out of that trauma phase, that stuck phase where they can't move from mundane to magical. As long as there's one person in that place, we have to wait, because that person, I don't mean wait for our own enlightenment, I mean wait for the full unified structure on a physical level. We need to ensure that all our other selves, which are other individuals, and other ideas and structures and places, etc., have started to shift out of that mundane. And we don't just race ahead and think, don't want walls, don't want borders, we need unity, we want to be unified with Europe. Of course we want to be unified with Europe. Absolutely. And from a spiritual point of view, there is no Britain, there is no Europe, there is no America. We are all one planet. But we need to get there in a physical sense. And there are steps to do that. And that is why the most spiritual thing to do in those two particular expressions of sovereignty is Brexit and the wall. And that's just two, it's happening all over the world, and not just in countries, but in smaller communities. So there are steps to get to where we want to go. But that, again, is the slow, linear unfoldment. A spiritual individual will see that as not necessary, because they're already at the fifth dimension where there are no borders, there's only unity. And they're correct, but we have to do both. And that's why I say we sit on the edge between mundane and magical. We embrace mundane and magical. We merge them together to create a new paradigm. And that's why you're seeing things so differently to the people around you, as am I, and as will be anyone who is balanced within spirituality. We don't go to the extreme and ignore the mundane and only live in the magical, because then we can't help the mundane.
Yeah.
Because we reject it. We don't want walls, we don't want boundaries, we want unification and unification only. And then you become rigid in your desire for enlightenment, which takes you out of balance, and you're not really enlightened at all when that happens. One must be in both. And that means being mundane. You know, it's okay to be mundane within the magical. You do both as a merge.
Absolutely. It's interesting because one of the things that was coming through me, especially for clients, and it was coming through me about a year, 18 months ago, was go back to basics. You know, it was all about we need to know where we start and stop.
Yes.
But, you know, yes, there is that aspect of us that is completely unlimited, part of the all that is. But there is also, on some level, this boundary that we also then need to get this grip on, because we are currently in a physical existence. So there is an aspect of us that has a boundary. And, you know, it's about, you know, having that awareness of what we're allowing in, what we're allowing to influence us, you know. And for me, yeah, like you say, the sovereignty is getting a grip on that. And then the moment that you do, you are then able to kind of transcend that, because you've got what it is to be this individualized divine spark. Then you can experience what it is to be part of the all that is. And it was kind of summed up to me experientially. I went for a walk, and a birch tree was calling me, so I went and placed my hands on the tree, and all of a sudden I just had this experience of being completely connected to everything. You know, everything. I was connected to the earth, the trees, the plants. It was all this golden light flowing beneath the earth, and it was like, yeah, we are all connected. But it was because I'd done enough work to reach the point of kind of being aware of my boundaries and taking action to maintain healthy boundaries. You know, claim my own sovereignty of my own energy form on enough levels to then be able to kind of see beyond. And I'm not saying that I'm there all the time, but it was a lovely experience to have that, because it, for me, it kind of keeps you going.
Absolutely. And the enlightened individuals, the star seeds, the spiritually aware individuals, they need that. You had done what I would call walking through a fairy door or a portal. So when you touched the birch tree, you were in that fifth dimensional energy, and you were able to feel fully the ascended Gaia. So you had transported yourself from one earth to another, and you were able to feel the ascended Gaia, because that tree is connected to all things. Its roots are roots of light, and within the fifth dimensional ascended earth, that connects to all things and all structures. So you could see and feel the unity that would charge you. Literally, it actually does charge the cells within the DNA and helps light to photonic light, or it helps that light to shine and activate and assist you with getting your memories back, or assist you with placing those memories in balance. And they're not just memories of past, they're memories of future and of alternate realities as well. So you would have felt the unification of all things.
Yeah.
In that moment, that's where you were in the fully magical. But because you are living in a physical body in the year 2018 and you are experiencing linear time, then you step back out through the portal, you move back out through the fairy door, but you take that unification energy that you experienced back into your reality, and the light within the cells radiates to others. And that's why you're doing the summit, and that's why your work is occurring, because your work is the radiation of that. So that's why you do need that charge, and that is creating the fifth dimensional Gaia, the magical Gaia that you saw. That's creating it when you take that away back into linear reality. But some spiritual teachers and individuals who are not particularly would see themselves as spiritually aware are jumping forward to this ideal reality which is perfect, and many would say utopian. That's fine, we can have utopia, because Gaia and the fifth dimensional new earth is utopia, and it's absolutely a real future for us in the linear stream. We can have that utopia, but we have to get there. We can't just run off and say, I'm there, when your other selves, which are parts of you.
Yeah.
So you don't want your arm to run ahead without your leg, if you see what I mean. Those other individuals that are locked in trauma, they are you as well. And a planet, the Nine call this a planet reaching completion, is when there are two ways of looking at that. One is when the spiritually aware individuals, their consciousness reaches critical mass so that they are creating the timelines for it. That's already happened. So we've gone into that completion wave. And then that's a wave that goes all the way around the planet, waking everyone up. Completion is when I say everybody, it's a critical mass point. Then the planet has achieved its sole purpose within this particular level, and it graduates. It goes to a higher octave. It graduates to a higher octave. That's what's happening to our planet. And that's what's happening to all of us as the planetary guardians, and individuals who are spiritually aware can feel it in one way or another. Whether they see it as two earths and they're jumping from one earth to another, or whether they see it as a mass enlightenment or an ascension process or a huge awakening, a truth movement sweeping the nation, it's still the same thing. And it's real. It isn't something that spiritual people talk about and to make themselves feel good. It's real. It's really, really happening, amongst the chaos of this world, and which can look very, very to the individual who hasn't looked spiritually, this planet looks like it's falling apart. Especially Western society. It looks as though it's ruined and there's no way back. And if we don't do this, that and the other, we're doomed. That's how that's the paradigm within the fully mundane, the third dimensional, the individuals who are locked in that trauma. Their view is we're doomed. And so that's why we are here, to find ways, us, who are spiritually able to see beyond that, because you can understand why they are viewing things that way, because they don't have the ability to see all the nuances and the patterns, and also the whole we are doomed paradigm is a deliberately created paradigm. As you were saying, we have belief systems that have been created for us, so we have to move out of that. And we can actually take such an opposing view, which is I wouldn't say we are saved. That would be the opposite to we are doomed, and that's just as bad, really. But it's because we don't want to go in the savior thing. But it's we are co-creators, and we can have whatever we want, and we're living it now. It's there. That is there for us, but it doesn't mean we opt out of all the chaos. It doesn't mean we run off and leave our brothers and sisters behind. We stay and we work with those individuals to help them in whatever way we can, giving whatever offering we can do. So if you're a channel and you're bringing through channeled messages, that's one way. If you're a healer, if you are a musician, if you're making people feel good because you're an actor and they love your series that you're in, you're a fiction writer and people love your books. I mean, a jewelry maker, people love your jewelry, whatever it is. We each have a gift to offer to assist those people to move out of that stuck, mundane, trauma-filled place, so that they too can start to move into this new paradigm. And it's absolutely happening, and that's why this year is the year of sovereignty, because we are becoming sovereign, because the enlightened individuals are creating that sovereign paradigm within them, and they've reached critical mass. Then that is radiating around everywhere.
I've definitely been that's been coming through, and I feel that, because it's like I say to clients, it doesn't matter, you don't have to be somebody who stands on a stage and in front of masses of people. it's what you do in each and every moment. You know, when you are able to allow yourself to embody your light and allow that light to shine, whether it's just smiling at somebody or just them being in your energy, you're radiating that frequency, you're radiating and therefore uplifting and unlocking and freeing that aspect within that individual, but also, you know, understanding that we do have free will. They may choose not to, you know, they may get the energy coming in and they may choose against it. And that's also fine and perfect for their particular journey and path through it. But it doesn't stop us from each individually taking that responsibility to be in our sovereignty and allow our light to shine in whatever way, shape or form that may be. And it doesn't have to be grandiose and glorious and, you know, you don't have to be famous. You can just shine your love and light out into the world, at the supermarket, you know, at the school as you pick your children up or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. And people, they may appear to not choose that they want that energy, that enlightened energy, but ultimately all human beings that have incarnated within a service to others vibration or within a pathway that is guiding them towards a service to others vibration, the choice will be to experience that. But it may be that they choose a certain timing or that they choose a certain way that they awaken. So on the one hand, it's a choice, but also when someone is locked in that trauma, they may feel that they want to make the choice and they can't. So that is another reason why healing needs to come in from so many different perspectives and so many different ways, because when somebody may respond to one person may respond to spiritual healing, another person may reject that but respond to something more that appears more mundane, like counseling, or it may be that the exercise is what helps them, or nutrition. But there will always be something with everybody who's outside of a polarized service to self structure, because a polarized service to self structure is deliberately choosing the opposite of the way we see enlightenment. It's still enlightenment, but in a completely different way. Anyone, and that's a whole other story, but outside of that structure, everyone else, there's a way. Unless they've actually found that they're locked into a service to self structure themselves, everyone else that is outside of that, even though they may appear to be locked in trauma and they can't access that higher flowing energy, there is a way in that person somewhere. So as a healer, the way forward is to find where it is that you can go in and help that person. What is it about them? These people may be so locked in fear and hatred, but they may love their dog. Okay, so you go in through the dog. You know, what I'm saying is there's always something that is there that is a reflection of love in some form, or a reflection of creativity, or a reflection of hope. There's something, and unraveling traumas within individuals can unlock those and find where that love is, and that balance, that hope. It may be religion, and it may be religion in a distorted sense, but then you can go in that way and shift the religious paradigms and beliefs into something that is more akin to truth. You know, not saying there's no truth in religion, because there is, but you know, there also isn't. Depends where you are. So there's always a way for an individual to, because ultimately everyone on a higher level has made that choice, because everyone goes through ascension eventually, whether it's in this life or another reality. That is the way of universal flow in this particular sort of group of infinite universes. The flow within this particular group of infinite universes is ascension.
Yes. Yeah. And absolutely. I mean, one of the reasons that I brought that up was because one of the lessons for me was respecting another's journey. And that was with my father. You know, I was very much aware in my early life that he had so much trauma and pain inside of himself that he would eventually die of cancer if he didn't do the work to acknowledge and release and love himself again. However, his journey in this lifetime was to get to a certain point, but he was unable to do all the steps for him to transcend that within this lifetime. Yes. And that was hard for me, because I, as a healer as well, I took the responsibility that I should have been able to save him. I should have been able to drag him through the trauma and the pain. So the lesson for me was actually respect everybody's journey, because, we're all on our own individual path, and, his time will come again. If that's, his perfect journey to ascend, it will happen for him in perfect divine timing. And it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone around us is going to go through the exact same process in the exact same timing as we do, or that we would want them to as well.
Exactly. And it carries on in the non-physical, depending on where the memory, cohesive memory structure is within that person who's passed over. If they remain cohesive within a memory structure, then things carry on. Passing away from the physical body isn't the end of the ascension process. It continues. But in that respect, that would have been a choice, regardless of whether he couldn't access healing. That would have been a choice within. Some individuals need to stay within the comfort zone that they know. So it's difficult for some people to move into accessing healing in one form or another, and even more difficult for the healer when they're the one that's standing in the paradigm of healing, and they are able to see the healing tools and that those healing tools will work. And they're stood before their loved one who they love. When it comes to your father, in many ways, a daughter loves their father more than anybody. It's I don't mean more than anyone, but it's an extremely connected love from daughter to father. And I know exactly what you mean. I lost my father back in September, and there were similar things with him. He ended up getting dementia. So the taste buds changed, and all he wanted was sugar. So I'm trying to find all these sugar-free sweet items that are sweetened with apple juice or something instead. But no, he wanted like the really sugary cakes and biscuits. And I knew that he wasn't helping his healing. But it's about respecting someone's choice, even if they are in a position where they can't make decisions. It's very, very difficult to decide. Do you say, no, you are not having those sweet cakes and Kit Kats and everything else? Or do you allow, knowing that you are actually going against healing? So it is about respecting the choices of the individual in as much of a way that you can, and offer as much healing as you can without overstepping the boundaries of that soul. And you have to work multidimensionally as well. Very difficult when you've got the physical person saying, I want all these sugary sweets, and that you're speaking to the higher self of that person that's saying, no, I actually don't. Can you stop my physical self from eating those sugary things? And you're balancing all of this, and you have to find, well, where are the boundaries? Where am I crossing boundaries? Where am I helping, and where am I forcing? And so as a healer, that's a big one, and that's why you went through that journey with your father, because your father's given you a gift. Because you've learned that lesson, a big, big lesson, in a very safe space. And your father made that decision and to leave the physical, as my father did as well. And then they can come back to us in the non-physical forms, which I'm sure you've had that happen. I've certainly seen my father since he passed away. And the relationship between the daughter and the father, or any loved one, it continues. It continues in a different form. As I said earlier, it's about finding the balance in everything, not jumping into the fully enlightened, highly spirit. I'm a healer and you must have this crystal. I'm a healer and you have to eat this food and do as you're told because I'm a healer and you're not. That's way off, But then neither would you be saying, do you know what, eat whatever you want, I'm not going to bother healing you anymore because you're not listening to me, so do what you like. That's not the right place either. And it is a hard one, it is a difficult one, and it's finding the balance of continuing to love unconditionally, continuing to heal, continuing to offer that healing without overstepping the personal boundary of that person on a physical level, and conveying that to the higher self aspect of the physical person as well, and working on all those levels. So no one said a spiritual journey is easy. It isn't.
No,
it isn't easy on one level. It's a challenge, but there is a flow to it. I've heard a lot of spiritual teachers say, oh, it's so easy. Once you've got it, you've got it. It's so easy. I would say it's probably better to use the words, there's a flow to it. And once you have that flow, you flow. But when it comes to being easy or difficult, it isn't easy, because there are aspects of the spiritual path that will be big, challenging conundrums, and they will come at you a lot because you're in a third dimensional body. But when you navigate them well, then the learning and the self-empowerment and your own healing is wonderful. Even if you don't navigate them well, you still have a massive amount of healing and awareness, because you can think, well, I did that really badly. I made a right mess of that, but now I know what I did. I won't do that again. So there really is no wrong path. There really is no mistake when you look at it from that point of view. But you mustn't forget that the journey is full of wrong paths and mistakes and right roads and correct roads as well. You have to embrace both of those viewpoints. Every single paradigm, when you become spiritually aware, is a multi-dimensional paradigm, full of multi-levels and multi-perspectives. There is no right, wrong, yes, no, black, white. It's a unified structure, but within that unified structure, there are sections to that unity, because you are embracing linear reality and non-linear reality at the same time. And when you're doing that, you will have compartmentalized unification.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's a really good place to stop, actually, because we've been speaking for over an hour now. I could go on for hours and hours just chatting about this stuff.
I was just watching the snow falling out the window. It's like sat here talking to you, nice and warm in the house, and it's snowing outside. And it's snowing where you are as well, isn't it?
We had it earlier on today. It's not snowing at the minute, but it's a bit on and off. But it's magical. It's magical out there.
It's magical when you're not out in the car, stuck in the traffic, or when you can just watch it out the window or look at it in the garden. It's beautiful, and it's very cleansing.
Absolutely. And again, that comes down to our perspective of it, doesn't it? Yes. It depends exactly how you're experiencing it in that now moment.
Well, it's snow, everything, take everything, snow, sun, they're both beautiful, they're both healing, they're both cleansing, they're both invigorating, and they both create rebirth, but they also can be destructive and harmful. Everything has got the positive and the negative. We're in a reality of duality, and the way to navigate it is through the middle path, the balance, embracing both, embracing night and day, the Tao, taking that middle path. All these ancient religions, they were ancient paths. They've got it. The truth has been there all around us since the beginning of time. It's just finding it.
Absolutely. And different varieties of truth, and they all seem to be catching up with the old ways now. They all seem to be converging into the one. So we'll leave it there, because we have been speaking for over an hour now, and I'm just conscious of the time for people to kind of set aside to watch these videos. But it's been absolutely wonderful having you on the show, Magenta. Thank you so much for joining us and the audience. And you've shared an awful lot. We've spoken about a lot of different topics, but just I completely trust with these interviews that the perfect message is going to come through for the audience. And so, just allow all of the information to just sink beautifully into your field, there may be just 1 or 2 points that you just think, oh yeah, and that's the bit that you remember about it, but you are absorbing it all. So thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Louise. Thank you.
So for the audience, we have just finished the first week of the summit. I hope you've been enjoying the interviews thus far, and I'm certainly looking forward to sharing the rest of the summit with you. We've got some really amazing speakers, not only Magenta for today, but others to follow. So love and grace to you all, and I shall speak to you again tomorrow. Take care. Bye.